It's a lovely day today, so whatever you've got to do, you got a lovely day to do it in, that's true. And I hope whatever you've got to do is something that can be done by two, or I'd really like to stay.
Welcome to Ask Aunt Ann. It's a lovely day here, and I hope it's a lovely day where you are. Who doesn't like cake? I know I do, and on today's show, we're celebrating cake by looking at the history of wedding cake, sharing a few cake recipes, and we even have a fun cake stand do-it-yourself project for you. Later on, we'll hear a song from my nephew Ronnie, and of course, there will be a poem. Please stay with us. There's going to be cake. Here's our first letter. It's from Carol Whelan in Hustisford, and she writes, Dear Aunt Ann, my family really likes cake, but I just don't have time to bake. What's your advice? Well, Carol, if you think making a cake takes too long, here is a fun idea for you. A recipe that takes minutes to make and only uses 2 ingredients. All you need is a cake mix and a 12-ounce can of soda. It's super quick, and you cut the fat from the recipe because you aren't using oil or butter. And if you use a low-calorie carbonated beverage, you're doing even better. For instance, if you combine a Betty Crocker Super Moist White Cake Mix and 12 ounces of peach mango flavored no-calorie soda, a serving will contain 160 calories and 3 grams of fat. If you make the cake according to the recipe on the box, it has 228 calories and 10 grams of fat. Not a bad reduction. To make these cakes, all you need to do is stir the soda into the dry cake mix and then follow the baking instructions. Here are a couple of my favorite combinations. French vanilla cake mix with orange soda makes a creamsicle cake. Strawberry cake mix and vanilla cream taste like strawberry shortcake. And add ginger ale to a spice cake mix to kick up the flavor. And a can of cola in a devil's food cake mix is unbelievably good. I made some quick cupcakes with a lemon cake mix and lemon lime soda. Don't they look great? Use your imagination and tell us what worked well for you. And cake isn't the only thing you can make from a cake mix. Leah Johnson from Isabella sent us this letter. Dear Aunt Ann, I thought your listeners might be interested in this recipe I found for fast, easy cookies using a cake mix. All you need is one 18.25 ounce box of cake mix, 2 eggs, and 1/2 cup vegetable oil. Heat your oven to 375. Mix cookie ingredients together. Drop by teaspoonsful on an ungreased cookie sheet about 2 inches apart. Cook for 7 to 9 minutes or until the edges start to brown. I like to stir in about 1/2 cup of raisins, nuts, chocolate chips, or toffee bits, or some combination of the two. My neighbor's wife passed away a while ago, and I know he loves cookies. I do make some for him, but this recipe is so easy I thought he may enjoy making some himself. So I typed up the recipe on my computer, increased the font size so it was easy to read, printed it out, and had it laminated. I then bought a few different flavored cake mixes and some bags of nuts, baking chips, and different dried fruit. I added a bottle of vegetable oil and brought it over to him. We made the first batch together and he was delighted with the outcome. He has come up with all kinds of flavor variations and now he brings me cookies. What a great idea, Leah, and so thoughtful. I'm sure our listeners will want to do that for people in their lives too. Thank you. We're going to be starting a new segment on our show today. We're calling it Rate the Recipe. On each show, we will feature a recipe that you may be hesitant to try. Maybe it has an unusual ingredient or flavor combination, Or, in the case of this week's recipe, both. We asked Marjorie to try it out for us. What did you make, Marjorie?
Well, Anne, it seems like everyone is on a special diet these days, so we thought that we'd make a gluten-free, vegan chocolate cake. This was a fairly easy one. I found most gluten-free baked goods call for the 3 or 4 ingredients to replace the flour, but this one didn't. And it's from the cookbook No Excuses Detox by Megan Gilmore. Here's what was on the ingredient list. 1/4 cup coconut oil, plus more for greasing the bottom of the pan. 1 1/4 cups oat flour, more on that later. And you'll also need 1 1/4 cup coconut sugar, 6 tablespoons of cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of fine salt, 3/4 cup water, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. You need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees and then line a 9-inch round cake pan with parchment paper. Then you grease the parchment paper with coconut oil, and in a large mixing bowl, combine all the ingredients and whisk them together until no lumps remain. And then pour it into the prepared pan and bake the cake for 30 minutes or until the top is firm to the touch. Put a cooling rack on top of the cake, flip it over, and remove the pan and the parchment paper. Now let it cool completely before cutting the cake because it will be too soft and crumbly. Overall, I really like this recipe. 1 ingredient flour was a big plus, and all you had to do was to make the flour is to take quick cooking oatmeal and grind it in your food processor. Now, I used a smaller version, and it worked great. My problem came in when I realized my oatmeal was a thicker cut than what was called for, and so the flour itself wasn't as smooth as I would have liked, and it gave the cake a little bit more of an uneven texture, but it wasn't a game changer. It really didn't make that much difference. The second problem was all my fault. I looked at the photo of the cake, and I didn't read the instructions as closely as I should have. The photo showed a cake with 2 layers, so I divided my batter. And to make the 2 layers, the recipe had to be doubled. So this was explained in the preface to the recipe, but not in the recipe itself. Although it did say cake pan, not cake pans. Now I actually like the 2 smaller layers because this is a very rich chocolatey cake. So if you double the recipe, cut your pieces smaller. Now, cake without frosting is like a day without sunshine. So, on the next page of the recipe book, I found chocolate sweet potato buttercream. Yep, I was a little surprised too. Here's what it called for. 1 cup of mashed sweet potato, 6 tablespoons cocoa powder, 3/4 cup maple syrup, 1/4 cup melted coconut oil, 2 teaspoons vanilla extract, and 1/8 teaspoon fine salt. Now you put all the ingredients into a high-speed blender and blend until smooth. I actually really like this cake. It has a heavier texture than most cakes, but once you get past that, it was very good. Rich and chocolatey, and you don't taste sweet potatoes or maple syrup. Unfortunately, the book didn't provide any nutritional information, so although I know it's gluten-free and vegan, I have no idea on the calories or fat content. I gave this recipe 4 out of 5 wooden spoons. We'll have the recipe up on our website soon, and I brought you a piece, Anne, so what do you think?
Well, it certainly looks and smells delicious.
It does smell good, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's different, right? It's not kind of what you're expecting, but it really is good.
The texture is a little bit dense, but the flavor, the richness, definitely worth 4 stars.
All right.
Or spoons.
4 wooden spoons. That's going to be the way we're going to judge these. How many wooden spoons is a recipe? So, all right.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
I can't wait to see what we try next time. If you have a recipe you're hesitant to try, send it our way and we may use it on the show. But make sure you tell us where it originated. Our next letter comes to us from Grays Lake. Brenda Summers writes, "Dear Aunt Anne, I'm hosting a bridal shower for a friend next month. The food is all desserts. Do you have a suggestion for a fun and inexpensive way to display the sweets? Well, Brenda, I have a great idea for you. Make your own cake stands. You can find supplies at a resale shop, dollar store, or any craft store. You'll need a column, a candlestick holder or vase works really well, and then you just attach a plate or tray to the top. Here are a couple that I made. These were painted to look like sea glass. Here's what you need to make one. Mod Podge matte finish, food coloring, dishwashing liquid, a sponge brush or paintbrush. First, clean and dry your glass items and then cover your work surface to protect it from stains. Then mix up your paint. I poured a little of the Mod Podge in a bowl. To that, I added 3 drops of the blue food coloring and 1 drop of green to get the aqua color I was going for. You can mix whatever color you want. There are no rules. I then added a few drops of dish soap. This creates a more frosted look on the glass rather than clear, and it also helps making cleanup easier. I gave it an even coat and then let it dry. If you want more intense color, add 2 to 3 coats, allowing it to dry in between each coat. There are a few subtle streaks sometimes, but I didn't mind them. It may depend on how thick the Mod Podge is and also the surface of the glass. I had some with slight streaks and others with none at all using the same mixture. Since this is a temporary color project, it washes off easily, and if you aren't satisfied with it, or if you just want to use it for a while and then change the color for a different look, it's very simple. If you want the color to last, apply a light coat or 2 of sealer. Try Krylon Matte Finish. Aren't they pretty? You can select 2 or 3 complementary colors and mix and match. If you are concerned with putting food on the painted plate, just add some pretty little paper doilies. Another idea is to find a set of matching candlesticks and paint each one a different color. Just keep the plate unpainted for interchangeable base options. Brenda, your dessert table will surely look great. I think it's time for a little entertainment. My nephew Ronnie has a song for us that fits perfectly with our cake theme. Enjoy!
I can never be loved by anyone sweeter than you, and I can never belong to anyone sweeter than you. With you to stand beside me, I'll never be alone. And what more could I long for than to have you for my own? My only desire is loving you eternally. For though no other love could ever mean so much to me, so if you say you love me, forever I'll be true. And what more could I long for than to live my life with you? I could never be loved by anyone sweeter than you. And I could never belong to anyone sweeter than you.
That was wonderful, Ronnie. Now don't go away. I think we have a lot of cake to eat up. We have one more cake recipe to share with you. It's for apple cake. It's really easy and super moist. We found it on the food blog Recipe Tin Eats. It's called the easiest ever moist apple cake. You don't even need a mixer to make it. It serves 12 and freezes well. Here's what you'll need. 2 cups of plain white flour, sifted, 3/4 teaspoons baking soda, 3/4 teaspoons each of salt, cinnamon, and ground cloves, 1/4 fresh ground nutmeg or a 1/2 teaspoon pre-ground nutmeg, 1 1/4 cups white or light brown sugar, 1 cup vegetable oil, 2 eggs, 1 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 2 cups of apples peeled, cored, and cut into 1/3 inch cubes. That's about 2 large or 3 small tart apples like Granny Smith. Don't use canned apples because they make the cake drier. If you'd like, you can add a 1/2 cup flaked raw almonds and powdered sugar for dusting. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Grease and line a 9-inch springform cake pan with parchment paper on the bottom and the sides. Next, place flour, baking soda, salt, and spices in a large bowl and whisk to combine. In another bowl, whisk oil and sugar, and then whisk in eggs and vanilla. Pour the wet ingredients into the dry and mix with a wooden spoon until just combined. Stir in the apple cubes. You can add 3/4 cup chopped walnuts or other nuts at this point if you'd like. Pour into the cake pan and sprinkle almonds on top if you're using them. Bake for 50 to 60 minutes. It's cooked when a skewer inserted into the center comes out clean. Cool for 10 minutes in the pan and then turn out onto a rack to cool. Dust with powdered sugar if you're using it and then serve. Doesn't that look yummy? No show on cakes would be complete without the mention of wedding cakes. For thousands of years, weddings have been celebrated with a special cake. Ancient Roman wedding ceremonies were finalized by breaking a cake of wheat or barley over the bride's head as a symbol of good fortune. After all the cakes were used up, the guests were supplied with handfuls of confetto, a sweet mixture of nuts, dried fruit, and honeyed almonds. Eventually, that was replaced with rice, flower petals, and colored paper, and these new types of confetti continue to be showered over the happy couples around the world. Other superstitions have long been connected with wedding cake. Sharing the cake with family and friends is said to increase fertility and prosperity. The bride who bakes her own cake is asking for trouble. A taste of the cake before the wedding means loss of the husband's love, while a piece of cake kept after the big day ensures his loyalty. The newlyweds must cut the first slice together, and every guest must eat a small piece to ensure that the happy couple are blessed with children. Wedding cakes went from a dark, dense fruit cake to a lighter white in the 1600s when sugar became more available. The ingredients for the cake were expensive, especially the sugar for the icing, so white icing meant that only the finest refined sugar had been used. A pure white cake was a status symbol, a display of the family's wealth. At Queen Victoria's wedding to Prince Albert in 1840, white icing was used to decorate her cake, and this icing has been known as royal icing ever since. The multi-tiered cake measured more than 9 feet in circumference. The now traditional multi-tiered wedding cake, a grand affair of multiple cake layers decorated with royal icing and embellished with sugar flowers, doves, horseshoes, and bells, had its origins in the wedding cake made for the marriage of Prince Leopold in 1882. The cakes were piled on top of each other like a series of hat boxes. These tiered cakes soon began to symbolize prosperity and were a status symbol at society weddings. When Princess Elizabeth, now Queen Elizabeth II, married Prince Philip in 1947, the official wedding cake stood 9 feet high and weighed 500 pounds. Today, there are practically no rules about wedding cakes. In fact, a lot of weddings don't have cake anymore. You can serve cupcakes, pie, donuts, whatever makes you happy. Well, I think it's time to sample our cakes. Ronnie, come on over. Let's see what you think. I've got some apple cake and some chocolate cake for you. They both look and smell delicious.
It's great.
And the chocolate's delicious too.
It's also great.
Cake is a treat and shouldn't be eaten all the time, but every once in a while it's worth the splurge. Remember, stressed spelled backwards is dessert. I've always found that it's very easy to get children interested in cooking by baking sweet things like cake and cookies with them. Cooking is a very important life skill, and here's a fun poem that may help get the youngsters interested. When you're cooking in the kitchen, you're learning all the while to pour and measure, mix and stir, and sift flour into a pile. Scrub your hands before you start, then gather up the gear, like pots and pans and measuring cups that you use throughout the year. Go over the recipe step by step so you'll know just what to do. By carefully following the directions, it won't be hard for you. Have a hot pad handy and an adult standing by, so you won't hurt yourself when using the stove or baking a pie. Besides the fun and learning, there's always cleaning up to do. And even though it's quite a chore, it's part of cooking too. But after all the work is done, it will soon be time for dinner. And when someone asks for seconds, you'll know you've cooked a winner. Thank you for watching and spending some of your day with us. If you have a favorite poem, please send it our way through our website or Facebook page. We'll be back soon with a new show that you will be sure to enjoy. So please stop by for a visit and keep those letters coming.
It's a lovely day today, so whatever you've got to do, you got a lovely day to do it in, that's true. And I hope whatever you've got to do is something that can be done by two, or I'd really like to stay. It's a lovely day today, and whatever you've got to do, I'd be so happy to be doing it with you. But if you've got something that must be done, and it can only be done by one, there is nothing more to say, except it's a lovely day for saying it's a lovely day.